All right, let's dig into data interpretation by first focusing on pictographs. Now, with a pictograph, we're going to ask students to create pictographs from data. So here is an example of some data about these different players and the baseball runs that each player scored. First, we're going to determine a title for our pictograph that corresponds to the data set. Well, we're going to show those baseball runs, so maybe a title would be Baseball Runs Scored. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in my table, and I'm going to add a label for any columns or rows. So here you can see I've got my players in the first column, and then I'm going to show the runs scored in the second column, and I'm going to show those runs scored with a picture. Speaking of that picture, I'm going to use a baseball, and each baseball is going to represent 5 runs. I can make that choice because I see that the runs scored were 5, 10, 10, 25, and 15. Each of those could be easily represented by a baseball or several baseballs because they're all divisible by 5. Now I then am going to focus on the first player and how many baseball runs that student scored. That player, player 1, scored 5 runs, which means I'm going to show 1 baseball. Player 2 scored 10 runs, which means I would show 2 baseballs, 5, 10. Player 3 also scored 10 runs, so there I'll show 2 baseballs. Player 4 scored 25 runs, so there I'll show 5 baseballs, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And player 5 scored 15, so there I'll show 15. So in this example, I was able to make a pictograph from this data. Let's look at another example. Here I've got the student votes for favorite flavor of pizza, so maybe that would be my title. I'll go ahead and put in my table here. And then I'm going to see how many students voted for each type of pizza, and maybe I use a slice of pizza to represent 2 votes. So how many students voted for cheese? Well, 4 students did, so that would be 2, 4. Remember, each slice of pizza represents 2 votes. How many students voted for veggie? There I would show 3 slices of pizza to represent the 6 votes. How many students voted for barbecue? Only 1. I could cut that piece of pizza in half to show 1 vote. And then how many students voted for pepperoni? 8 students did, represented by 4 pizzas. So that's another example of how we could create a pictograph based on some presented data. So that brings us to this pause, and I'd like you to consider how you teach students to understand pictographs in the classroom.